Folks, Yishai Fleischer here, and I'm thinking about the future of Israel's security. I'm thinking about how to defeat the jihad. I'm thinking about how to come back to values of faith and heritage of our Jewish peoplehood and of our land of Israel, and not to give it up to the bad guys who want to take over Gaza, South Lebanon, come in from Jordan, come into Judea and Samaria and destroy us. We can't let that happen again. I spoke yesterday with Moshe Davis of the IDSF. It's an organization in Hebrew they're called the Beautification. They're Israeli officers in the IDF who are concerned with Israel's security, real security, not fake security by giving away our land to our enemies, which is just plain stupid, just plain dumb, and ends up causing tremendous war like October the 7th. So here's my conversation about the future of Judea and Samaria, how to get rid of jihadism there, who should govern Gaza, and how we get rid of the jihad, not just as a physical fighting force, but also as an ideology. Let me know what you think by liking, commenting, subscribing, and also you can support us in the links below. You can find out how. Here's my conversation with the HaBitchonistim, Moshe Davis of the IDSF.
Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew name is HaBitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. Thank you so much to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing so that we can really bring you behind the headlines of what is happening here in Israel. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by Yishai Fleischer. Yishai is the international spokesperson for Hebron. Yishai, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Moshe.
Yishai, there's a lot we can discuss and a lot of questions I have for you. We'll see if we run out of time. But let's start with something that's really in the news cycle right now, that the Palestinian Authority is promoting themselves as being the potential successors to Hamas in Gaza, that they will be able to run Gaza, govern Gaza in the future. I'm curious what your reactions are, and specifically in light of your intimate knowledge of the PA as far as their successes and failures in Judea, in Samaria, in Hebron. So if we could start off with that, it would be great.
Well, here's a coin. You see this coin? And it's got two sides to it. And that's exactly what the PA and Hamas are. It's two sides of the same coin. It's a very sophisticated operation in which one side is jihadist and has jihadist dress and language. And then there's another side which is appeals to the West. It speaks in terms like peace and order and talks about the two-state solution, and it wears suits and ties. But it's really two sides of the same coin because both of those are jihadist organizations, just with a little different flavor. But it's important to note that the PA is the main source of funding for the Hamas and continues to be. All the Hamas terrorists that even did October the 7th are paid through the machinery of the PA. The PA is a terrorist organization. It teaches jihadism. And when I say teaches jihadism, you don't have to dig very deep. You don't have to look for it. I have PA television here at home. If you turn it on for 1 minute, you're like, wait a minute, this is like a call to war channel.
جزء من عقيدتكم مهدد ومحتل ومدنس لا تدع لا ظالما ولا جبارا ولا محتلا اللهم احصهم عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم احدا.
And I find in Hebron, oftentimes I see in the garbage school books, I take them out. I don't read Arabic very well. But I take out the Google Lens, translates it for me, and it's full of jihadist ideology.
When I asked him about why it's not being taught that Jerusalem's Western Wall was part of the ancient Jewish temple that the Romans destroyed in 70 AD, he insisted the site is an Islamic holy site.
Historically, it is called Ha'it al-Burak.
I understand.
And it is related to an Islamic story belongs to Prophet Muhammad.
And does it mean anything to Jews? Did it ever in history mean something to Jews, that wall?
If they want to cheat others and to say this holy place, maybe they can say to on any place on the West Bank and Gaza, they can say it is a holy place for us.
That is what they teach at the PA school level, at the PA social media level, at the television level, and certainly in their mosque level. But they turn to the West with this fraud because they have found that we are gullible, naive, and suckers. And so they continue to operate like that. Now, the PA, on the one hand, works together with Hamas, but on the other hand, they're competitors. So if you recall, in 2005, Israel gave away its own land rather stupidly to our enemies. And by the way, I want to make sure that everybody understands, giving your land away to your enemies is dumb. It does not work out well. We gave away our land, our own land, to the PA. In parentheses, I was down there with my wife protesting so that it would, we were telling the state of Israel, don't do it because it's going to become a terrorist state. The PLO-PA took over, and soon they were replaced violently by Hamas because, again, while they work together, they're also competition. And Hamas wanted a so-called state of their own, a chunk of land that they could use. And what they did in those years between 2005 and 2023 is turn Gaza into one big terror base. I have to add, right underneath our nose, right? The highly regarded Israeli intelligence services missed that little thing that they were creating a terror tunnel system right underneath our nose, right next door. And so the PA immediately gave way to the Hamas. I like to call the PA a gateway drug. Remember that term, gateway drug? Okay, they're like a gateway drug. They start off, but then it becomes totally jihadist. And so too in the town of Hebron, which is nominally controlled by the PA-PLO. In fact, its spirit is totally Hamas. And I must tell you that the mayor of Arab Hebron today is a guy by the name of Tiasir Abu Snena. And he's a guy that in 1980 was part of a cell that shot and killed 5 Jews. We know it's the same Tiasir Abu Snena because he runs on that campaign. He's like, I kill Jews. I'm really good at it. Give me a chance. Come on, put me in, coach. So that's who we're dealing with. And when they say that they're going to take over Gaza, we should, have a realization. We've already been through this nightmare. Why would we want that again? Now, the problem is, Moshe, is that our beloved leadership and our beloved state of Israel, and I say that without joke, the state of Israel that we are patriots of and that we love so much, has a certain element of incompetence, and for some reason cannot swallow the conclusion, which is so simple and so plain, but seemingly is hard to swallow, which is that nobody is going to be able to govern Gaza except for us. Israel. Israel's the natural governor of that piece of land, which was controlled by Israel under the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans, and under King Solomon, and under Israel from the 70s till 2005. We are the natural controllers. Now, President Trump has also issued a very remarkable and new idea. On the face of it, I wouldn't be happy with this idea. I'd be like, hey, why would I want America, right next door? Other than the, possibility that we'll get a Costco and a Target next door, which does sound good to me, quite good. Other than that, it's, why would I want America to control and create a territory that's not really theirs? But given the weakness and ineptitude of the decision making that is hard for Israel to believe that it's going to govern it, I prefer that President Trump and make it into some kind of an American territory as opposed to a jihadist territory. But that's what we find ourselves in. So when I hear that the PLO is talking about that it's reforming itself and it's really ready to take Gaza, it's a mockery, and it is classic Middle East lies, and it only waits for suckers to fall into its trap. If you're a normal Middle Easterner, you just say, come on, buddy, we've been here, we know the truth. And people respect you when you call out lies and when you push back on it. But when you don't, and you actually take it seriously, then you are playing a fool, and that is not the position to be in the Middle East.
I want to push back for a moment because I what I want to, I guess, understand is let's take for a second that we do not believe that the PA is going to reform. They are that other side of the coin of Hamas, as you said. But if we were to compare Gaza to Judea and Samaria, they're very different. In Judea and Samaria, the PA does govern, so to speak, and it's not a pretty situation with them. But at the same time, you have beautiful cities like Efrat and Ma'ale Adumim and many, many places where Jews are quite safe to be. And Jewish life is thriving despite the difficulties of the PA. So unless you believe that Gaza can become, paradise overnight, maybe there's an argument, and I want you to push back on this, maybe there's an argument that, well, the PA, if we put them into Gaza, so maybe we can recreate a Judean Samaria type scenario there.
Right. So the problem with that analysis is that it's flawed because the truth of the matter is that the PLO, PA-controlled cities are really full of arms and jihad. You see the operation that Israel is doing in Jenin, and it'll do it in other places as well. It would do it in Hebron. We have an estimation of about 500,000 illegal weapons, and I think that's a gross underestimation that are found in Arab households. One M16 does one heck of amount of damage. We saw that in that bus attack a few weeks ago. It kills, and one M16 could change the life of a whole bus full of passengers. The terrorists are simply waiting for their turn. They are playing it tactically. They're waiting for their time to operate. Moreover, the PA control, which is jihadist, not because I am trying to call them bad names. I'm telling you, it's in their books. You can go to Palestinian Media Watch and see what they're putting out every single day. Just see the content of what they're teaching. It's just a tinderbox waiting to happen. Moreover, the PA, as I was saying before, is a gateway towards Hamas. So Hebron is a Hamas-controlled city, even though it's nominally run by the PA, and there are others like that. The reason that you conflated, according to that argument, that the relative safety of Jews in Efrat or in Ma'ale Adumim, that safety exists because the IDF is strongly found in Judea and Samaria. It surrounds those Arab cities, those PA-controlled cities. It's on our highways. It's in our towns. It's a highly militarized zone. Now, if you want to tell me, let's take that formula and put the military back into Gaza, well, that makes perfect sense to me. That's how we should govern it. We should govern it even smarter than that, I think. But the idea that the PLO is also a land thief. It's also an ethnic cleanser. It believes that Jews should not live in the land of Israel, what they call Palestine. It teaches that throughout the world. If you listen to Musab Hassan Yusuf, the son of Hamas, the Green Prince, so-called, he says, and I think very poignantly, that the main brunt of today's attack on Israel is in the international domain.
Hamas dragged Israel into a very dirty war. This is their strategy. It is not that Hamas didn't know what would happen after committing a genocide on October 7 and kidnapping many hostages. They knew that Israel would retaliate. In the meantime, they booby-trapped schools, hospitals, streets, and they have been digging tunnels for many years beneath one of the most populated areas on earth. So Hamas wanted many civilians to die. They wanted the children to die. And this was their strategy to bring the West to its knees. All those who believe in civilization, this has been a challenge to all the values of the West. And Hamas knew that they would bring the globe to a crisis where Israel would look like the bad guys.
We really have lost a lot of support around the world, and that's what they're focused on. So sometimes they actually sit back, don't initiate attacks. in order to work on other projects of delegitimization. So the PLO in Judea and Samaria is a danger now, and it's a danger later. It's a gateway to Hamas. It's not the way to govern. And for God's sakes, like, who governs their own land? Who allows hate of that country to grow in their own ancestral homeland? Oh, and I forgot one more important point, which is that the PLO, PA, works very much to also erase Jewish historical properties and the consciousness of those places, in cahoots with organizations like UNESCO. They erase historical assets, rename them Arab and Palestinian. For example, the Tomb of Rachel, which is well known to the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim world for the Christian world, as noted, for 2,000 years. We have records of it from then. We, of course, know it for 3,800 years. That was renamed by Yasser Arafat, who I mockingly call the great historian, because he was able to erase it and replace it with the idea that a Muslim assistant to Muhammad by the name of Bilal bin Rabah was buried there. He never made it to the land of Israel, but it doesn't matter. They are an erase and replace organization. So on so many different fronts, these people are our enemy. Sadly, the state of Israel has, I can't sit here, Moshe, and honestly throw all the blame on the PLO or the Hamas. I just can't do it honestly, because I just feel that that's a kind of dishonesty, and it's not getting to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that even our beloved state of Israel continues to channel funds towards the PLO, towards the PA, even though they pay to slay, literally. Israel continues the machinery of funding and does not call to make war on this organization that calls to erase us. By the way, PA maps are always all of the state of Israel. I want to show you, I actually have a piece of paraphernalia from Gaza. Okay, this piece of paraphernalia is a Hamas, it's a Hamas thing that's found in people's houses. And basically, it's the whole state of Israel. And there is a Hamas fighter, and he's on a boat. And this boat is to overcome the Al-Aqsa flood. And here's Al-Aqsa. And this is a knickknack that's found in average Arab homes in Gaza. The goal is to take over the whole of Israel. The goal is to certainly take over all of Jerusalem. That's who we're dealing with. So let's kind of like be real, be Middle Eastern, and fight back against this force. What are we asking for here, Moshe? We're asking for a small, safe Jewish state. It is not an imperialist state. It doesn't want other people's lands. The only time it wants other people's lands is when those lands are places that we are attacked from, and then we create secure borders. But generally, we want to live in our land. We want to work in peace and prosperity with our Arab neighbors through the Abraham Accords. But we should not tolerate jihadism in and on our borders. It's just that simple.
Yishai, I want to ask you a tough question. You're saying the blame does not entirely lie with the PA. We've made mistakes here in Israel. So we
continue to make mistakes.
What does it take? If October 7th didn't do it, what does it take for Israel to wake up and understand who our partners in peace are and who they are not?
Moshe, that's a tougher question than the other ones, and because now you're touching on sociology, psychology, post-Holocaust, Jewish progressivism, Jewish communism. There are things here that run very deep. The way the state of Israel was formed is a kind of socialism that governs from a bureaucratic middle and never lends itself to a type of like Trumpist moment or approach. It's a country that runs from a kind of very, consensus type way of thinking. Prime Minister Netanyahu is in political circles. It's well known that he's not a warrior in a real sense. He doesn't like war. He doesn't understand war. He understands other things, but he understands economics to some extent, but he does not, and he's a great statesman, but he's not a great warrior. And so you're touching on a lot of stuff, and the way you said it can be said as a question, it can be said as an accusation, which is like, Israel, after October 7th, you're not willing to wake up and destroy your enemies. And I don't have an answer for you exactly. And the reason I don't have an answer for you is because I myself grapple with that question every day, because we are patriots, deep patriots of the rebirth of the Jewish state. It's our passion. It's the reason that you make your show every single day, because we love it so much and we care for it. But how to fix Jewish psychology after the Holocaust and after the things that we've faced is it's not an easy. There's not an easy answer. I will throw out a little thought for you, and it's based in Torah. It's based in the stories, the Jewish lore, which is called Midrash, and it's there to teach you a lesson. It's not necessarily there to reflect reality. Sometimes it's a metaphor or homily. But the midrash that I'm speaking of, and there's a lot of it. There's many midrashim, but there's one that speaks about Noah's Ark. And the midrash, this Jewish lore goes on to say that amongst the many animals that existed on Noah's Ark, there was also one more passenger, and that passenger was actually a giant who lived through before the flood and survived the flood by holding on to the back of the ark. That giant's name was Og. He later became the king of the Golan Heights, the king of the Bashan. He has a lot of literature written about him. Og Melech Bashan, the book of Deuteronomy talks about him and what a giant warrior he was. But the Midrash goes on to say that actually Noah cut a small hole inside of the back of the ark and would feed Og, this giant that was supposed to be wiped out, but managed to stay alive and hang on to the ark. That's what the Midrash says. But the meaning that I would like to ascribe to it is that sometimes we come through horrors, and yet we continue to feed our enemies. Og should have died in the flood, but Noah, who was supposed to be the new generation that passed the flood and started the world over again, actually held on to that past generation and brought that evil into the next iteration of the world. And so too, we, the Jewish people, we passed through the Holocaust, and yet there's something in our psyche that makes us give life again to our enemies. We feed our enemies. We literally fed them in this war. We literally, instead of starving them out and certainly cutting out the fuel and making sure that electricity wouldn't run the turbines that run the tunnel system, we fed them. You could blame it on, what's his name, on Biden. Doesn't matter. Bottom line is you fed them. You fed them. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel fed our enemies while we warred with them. How do you explain that psychology? You'll have to ask a psychologist or a mystic. But that's my analysis of how Israel sometimes runs its wars. It literally feeds the enemies. And if for some of the older folks that are watching this, we can remember the another parable, which is that famous play and movie Little Shop of Horrors, right? Feed me, Seymour. When you start feeding it a little drop of blood, and you end up having to kill people to feed it, and that's an evil. And another way of saying it, yet from the sages, from the Jewish sages, is that he who is kind, who is merciful to the wicked, in the end ends up being wicked to the merciful or to the kind. And that's what the state of Israel does. By feeding this monster, we're doing evil to our own citizens, and we're merciful to the wicked.
That is a very powerful midrash, and it reminds me of when the Jews left Egypt. They took with them Egyptians who were a thorn in our side in the travels in the desert. Okay, let's switch gears for a moment.
It's important, for some of our viewers, for some of your viewers, it's important to understand that these ancient, very Middle Eastern texts sometimes shed light on Middle Eastern's way of thinking. So it helps us understand that this is not just religion; it's really the stuff that makes up the consciousness of this region.
Absolutely. Okay, so last topic. We just have a few minutes left. all of this drama and show by Hamas as they are releasing hostages and building stages and all of their propaganda. What do you make of all that?
Well, first thing, I don't want anybody to misunderstand the following words. I am a person who believes deeply that you should never underestimate the enemy. And I find that sometimes Jews and pro-Israel people kind of write off Arabs and have a way of talking which is dismissive. It's a mistake. I think the Hamas have a very sophisticated campaign that they're running. It involves video, it involves TikTok, and they're very good at it. And they're in cahoots with China. They're in cahoots with Russia. They're in cahoots with people who are masters of narrative weaving. And they are making a mockery out of Israel. And Israel, it's barely shown, you know? You barely see it on the news. You see it a little here and there. They don't show you that they are making a pageantry out of this hostage release. Now, I wrote a tweet the other day. Oh, excuse me. I wrote an X. I X'd. And that X that I X'd, I wrote something kind of inflammatory, but I think is totally true. I wrote, number one is that we see now through the uncovering of USAID funding, is that USAID funded the Kaplan protests, the judicial reform, anti-judicial reform protests. Then it funded Hamas pretty much directly and helped the funding for October 7th. There hasn't been shown a direct linkage to October 7th, but it's obvious. They've gotten hundreds of millions of dollars through USAID that came to Hamas, and that predated the October 7th, so it helped them get ready for that. And I want to say that when October 7th happened, I said, and people thought I was sick, and I said, I don't care what you say, because I said, and it's quoted, and you could find it. I said, you shall see, it will be found that the Biden administration paid for October 7th. You'll see it. And my reasoning was eminently logical. I said, if they just transfer all this money to, we knew at the time, to Iran, then there's no question that this money is going to flow into Hamas and therefore flow into October 7th.
Can you guarantee, though, that U.S. taxpayer dollars didn't go to Hamas to help fund this attack on October the 7th?
So everything that we're doing in terms of making sure that the assistance is used for purposes for which it's designated, not for other purposes. As I said, we have a robust system in place.
Can I share my concern, Mr. Secretary, to be more specific about this? In May of 2021, I traveled to Israel after the 11-day war. I met with Prime Minister Netanyahu with his national security advisor. They briefed me and my team on the fact that every humanitarian aid dollar, every foreign aid dollar that goes into Gaza is controlled by Hamas. They either direct it, they tax it, or they divert it. They even take pipes intended for the water system for civilians and turn those into rockets that are aimed at Israel. We've seen Hamas's own videos demonstrating this. So I'm going to come back and ask you, can you guarantee that U.S. taxpayer dollars weren't used in October 7th attack?
What I can guarantee is that we take every possible precaution to ensure that these resources are not diverted.
So the Biden administration paid for October 7th, but now we know that for certain. And I'm going to make another accusation now, which has not been proven yet. The USAID and the Biden administration has also flowed money into the Bring Them Home campaign. The Bring Them Home campaign is a campaign, ostensibly, it's beautiful. Just forget everything. Just bring the hostages home. But in fact, it is a machinery to weaken Israel, to weaken our resolve to fight and destroy Hamas. Remember, we used to say, we don't negotiate with terrorists. That used to be like a line that the West would say and Israel would say, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Today we say, do anything to just get our hostages back home. And that is to our great detriment. Thousands of terrorists have been released with horrific murder on their hands. And they've been released back into Israeli society, basically into Judea and Samaria and eastern Jerusalem and Gaza. Ridiculous. And so, in my opinion, we're getting a lot of promises from Netanyahu. He says, we're going to make sure that Hamas is destroyed and it's not going to govern Gaza. You know what? I don't see it yet. I don't see it. What I see is a hell of a play by Hamas to abduct successfully, to hold on to our abductees successfully and to now release them at their pace with their pageantry and make Israel look weak. This is not the Israel of Yoni Netanyahu and the Air France, Uganda, and Entebbe mission. This is something else completely, and it is a show of Israeli weakness. There were moments of strength, certainly the beeper operation and the taking of the Hermon mountain range, but I wouldn't go around handing everybody a golden beeper just yet, you know? I just wouldn't be handing out the golden beeper to everybody. I would be a little bit more circumspect and say, you know, the bad guys are still very much extant. And this 500-day war has yielded not a total victory. And in fact, we're playing into their script. And I respect our enemy, Hamas, for their brutal tactics and their social media narrative play. They are good at what they do. And Israel, to combat that, should be ruthless against them, should annihilate them, and should never succumb to their script and make them play by our script. And in the end, they shouldn't be around. That's the proper way to move forward. Netanyahu, words to the effect, are yet to be tested. It's yet to be successful. Let's hope they are soon.
Amen. Yishai Fleischer, international spokesperson for the city of Hebron. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.
Hey, folks, I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Moshe Davis of IDSF. Check out their channel as well. They do great stuff in fighting for Israel's real security. Part of that security is through heritage, knowing what our land is about, knowing our history. And the other part is having faith. Yes, we have to have weapons, but we also have to have the great weapon here in the land of Israel, which is the weapon of faith in God. Having faith in God gives our military strength. Having military strength means knowing that our strength comes from God. Yes, those two things are intertwined. Don't be afraid to be realpolitik and also be faithful. I hope that you are faithful and you are faithfully watching this channel. Please like, subscribe, comment, and also you could support us in the links below. You can find out how. God bless you wherever you are. May Hashem give his nation strength, and may he bless them with peace, and God bless you with peace wherever you are. Lots of love and lots of blessings from the land of blessings, and shalom.